Okay. All right. So we have created a user data model, and we also have created a user repository, which I am suggesting that it has the capability of being able to create, update, delete, and find for us user instances, right, from some mythical user table that is going to eventually exist. Notice that the table does not exist yet. Right? If we open up our user manager database, notice that our tables are empty. There's nothing in there. Right? So to exercise this, we're going to use we're going to create a simple REST front end to this, right? That will allow us to send requests, right? To create new users, to update users, delete users, right? So that we can exercise the repository. All right, so to do that, we're going to create a user service class that is going to be listening for incoming requests, right? Such as create a new user. So let's do that. Let's if we go back here and create a service controller here, we can say class. This will be a user service under com.ga services. There it is, service. So in here, we're going to declare this as being a RESTful controller, so that we can post, we can get, we can put, we can delete using URL requests to this endpoint. All right, so let's load this. Let's import REST controller. And one of the things that we'd like to be able to do is to public be able to create a new user. So it says we can say create a user, right? And we want this to be a user parameter that we can pass in. So we need to load a user from the user model. What we'd like to be able to do here is take this user and create it in the database, right? To save it in the database. So to do that, we're going to need the repository we just created previously, right? So let's bring the repository here. So this is the user repository, repository. Okay, and let's import it right here. Okay, I don't want to have to instantiate the repository. This is kind of our DAO, right? So this user repository kind of takes the place of our DAO. We don't have to write the DAO anymore, right? Instead, it's already been written for us, right? We just need to extend it a little bit, perhaps if it doesn't do exactly the things that we need, but definitely all the boilerplate functionality is there, right? So we're gonna auto wire this. Auto wire, I think, is that lowercase? What is it? Oh, auto wired. There we go. So what we'd like to be able to do here is just use the repository. One of the boilerplate functions on that is to simply save, right, whatever instance you give it. So you just save this user object. Okay, it'll save. This will be a synchronous call to a database, right? It will use the connections from the connection pool. It will just do an insert into the database, and once it's been inserted, it can return the actual instance that was inserted in the database, including the ID that was created, the unique identifier. So we can just return whatever the user repository returns, right? Which is the instance of the object that we created. Anyway, we want to be able to invoke this from sending a request. Typically, following the RESTful naming conventions and some of the other conventions on what should this be mapped to. This should be mapped to a post because we're creating new data. Right? So this will be a post mapping, and it's going to be mapped. And this is going to be mapped to slash API slash just user. Right. So if I post to API slash user, presumably it will invoke this function. Now typically we would need to, as part of that message, we would need to send also a JSON representation of the user that we want to create. Right. So we'll need to read the user from the body of that RESTful query. Right. So here we're going to annotate our user object. We're going to say that we want to retrieve it from, is it request body? Yeah. Meaning, read the request body, right? Parse the JSON object that's coming in the request body, right? And then map it in here. So notice there's two levels of mapping. Yes.
No. What's the difference between post mapping and request mapping?
Request mapping it handles both a get and a post. And you have to specify which one you want. If you want one or the other. So if you don't say what it is, a get or a post, it'll map to both. So this one is already this is the equivalent of saying a request mapping method equal post. Yeah. And same thing, just like there's a post mapping, there's a get mapping, there's a put mapping, there's a delete mapping. Right? It's just more terse. Okay. Less verbose. All right, there it is. So I think we're ready. We can start up our application, our course manager lecture here, and we can say run this, run on the server as a Java application. And it failed. Oh, okay, I need to configure the JDBC driver. Let me just copy that here as a dependency from another POM file. Right, so underneath, we are using MySQL driver. So let's add that as a dependency in our POM. There we go. And let's restart the server. Probably I should add it to this configuration, huh? Okay, I'll just remember to format that. All right, so it looks like it started. So now we have to send a post request to this. So we could create a user interface and whatnot. Instead, we're going to use POSTman. So POSTman is a really cool, nice little application. You should all be become familiar with if you're not. We're going to create a couple. We're going to generate a post request. I think I already have here a couple. And so for instance, we want to send a post request to localhost, and we want to post to this particular URL. And we want to make sure that we have the right content type, that telling that the data that's going to be sent over, we are using the MIME type application JSON, so that on the other side they know how to interpret this stream of characters, right? So what to do with it, right? They should be interpreted as an application JSON, and the body that we want to send over is a representation of that user, right? Such things such as username. And this could be Alice, and this password also Alice, and this as a first name, this could be Alice, and as last name this could be Wonderland. Okay. All right, there we go. It's complaining. What are you complaining about? Bad string. Oh, it wants quotes here? Yeah, it's right. Yeah, JavaScript. It's too forgiving for JavaScript developers, that it doesn't force us to quote things, quote the fields. Anyway, so let's try this out. Now remember, we don't have a tables here, so let's send post this. We'll send actually this is some generic This is a user service service dot create user. So let's post this. It sent it. Notice that it came back from the server, right? This is the JSON that came back from the server. Notice that it has an ID. That it didn't send it an ID. So presumably this is very hopeful. Let's go take a look on the server side. Now on the server side, notice that Hibernate. Notice that it used this insert. You can look at the syntax of the operation that it used, right? This is the prepared statement that it used. Insert into user, using using those names for the fields. For presumably a schema that now should exist, if we do a there we go. Notice that now there's a table that used to not be there, and if we can look at we can copy the create statement that was used. This is the create statement that was used to generate it, right? Notice that it has an ID. It's properly formatted, first name, last name. Notice that it used the underscores to name this, and that it declared ID as the primary key. Okay, this is perfect. And your JPA created this for us, right? There's no need for us to do any operation there, and it can be treated like just any other table. For instance, we can add additional users. Let's select. There we go. We have Alice at Wonderland, right? And we can add other users here. We can say Bob. Dylan. B. Dylan. And Bob Dylan has a very bad username passwords. Let's insert that. Let's apply. Okay, we created another one. Let's create another one. Let's see. We can say Charlie Brown. So C Brown and awful passwords. Oh, I'm sorry. I got them backwards. Sorry. Usernames. I want C Brown. And okay, we'll leave it the same. Let's apply that insert first. And let's update the usernames here. So B Dylan, apply, and we'll do an update. All right. So if we do a query on this, we have those three users there. Everybody good? All right. So we want to make sure that we can retrieve that, right? So just like we used the JPA repository to be able to create new instances and automatically insert them, we also can retrieve them from the database, and we'll do that next.